All right, so this is a review, so I am going to go through this fairly quickly. It's just there with the answer key as well if you need it. So just remember, your test is going to be very similar to this. We took it from the same mid-school math. This is a pre-assessment, so it's seeing what you guys know before we get started, and then the post-assessment at the end. So it's going to look very similar, but your post-assessment doesn't have any multiple choice. So these are your options for your answers. So which expression is equivalent to this? So what you need to do is just actually multiply, because remember, those parentheses mean multiply. So you would just distribute this in. So negative 5 times negative 3 is a positive 15y, and negative 5 times 7 is negative 35x. Now, we talked about earlier in the year that in grade 7, they will oftentimes write it as a plus or negative number because it's just showing you that they're interchangeable. But beyond this year, we never write it like that. Here, letter A is our answer because it's 15y plus a negative 35x, or 15y minus 35x. So on your tests, if the question's like this, it's open-ended, so you can write your answer. Either way will be acceptable, but this is the way that you should get in the habit of writing it, because going forward, that's how it's going to appear. All right, so for this one, it says, Mary simplified this expression. Which of the following shows the correct steps? So what would you do first for this? The first thing that we would do is we would distribute the negative 2 in. So when we distribute the negative 2, we would get negative 2 times 5x. So there's not much space here, so I'm just going to write it. So it'll be negative 10x. And then negative 2 times negative 3y will be plus 6y. And then we have 6 times negative x, so minus 6x. And then we have 6 times 3y, which is then plus 18y. And then we have that minus 4 at the end. So if you see, that's what we did here, is just distribute this in. So now we would just have to look and see which one of these follows into that next path. All right, so we would have letter D is negative 10x plus 6y minus 6x plus 18y minus 4. And then after we do that, we're now going to combine our like terms. So we have our x's. So we have our two x's here. So negative 10x minus 6x is then going to be negative 16x. Then we have our 6y plus 18y, which we know is then going to give me plus 24y, and then minus 4. So that is just going, what are the next steps? Once again, if this was on your test, you would just be simplifying it by yourself. All right, so here, this is doing what's called factoring, which you would have learned in grade 6. But since you have these options to see which one the answer is, you could just go ahead and distribute these numbers in to see which one will give you the answer. But for this one, we know that none of these are going to work. And we can just kind of go through process elimination. Well, we didn't learn what it is to multiply x by x. So this one wouldn't give us even though it would be negative 48, it would give us x squared. So this one wouldn't work. Here, they're adding to get to there, not multiplying, so that one wouldn't work. And here, that first number needs to be negative 48, and a positive 8 and positive 6 will give us a positive 48. So by process elimination, we know it's none of these. All right, here we're asked to simplify the expression. So we have 2 times negative k minus m plus 1.5 times 3k plus 2m minus k. So we can go ahead and just distribute. So it gives us negative 2k minus 2m. And 1.5 times 3 is then going to give us plus 4.5k and plus 3m minus k. And now we look for our like terms. Well, here we have k, k, and k. So remember, we can just add all the numbers out front. So negative 2 plus 4.5 minus 1, and that's k. So this is then going to give me 2.5, so it'll be 1.5k. And then we have our other like terms of minus 2 plus 3, so plus m. And that will be your final answer. All right, so for this one, it says write an expression to represent the description, simplify the expression, add 2 to x. So we're translating this. So add, we know we're going to plus 2 to x. So it'll be x plus 2 or 2 plus x. Either way, it's fine. Triple that sum. What does it mean to triple something? If I give you a number, let's say 5, and I ask you to triple that, well, we multiply that by 3 to get 15. So this x plus 2 could represent that whole number 5. So if we want to triple it, we need to put the whole thing in parentheses to say that we're multiplying the entire number that we already established and subtract 4 from that result. So then we will then minus 4. Something like this won't really be on your test. If there's any word problems that you have to translate, it would be like the ones that we were doing in the last section that are more direct and not just like taking a number and doing that. All right, shown as a current school soccer field. The length and width of the field will each be increased by n feet. Which expression represents the perimeter of the larger field? Select all that apply. So the length and the width will each be increased by n feet. So that means that in this new field, it will be 150 plus n, and here will be 65 plus n. That will how we can represent the length and the width. And for this, if we're talking about the perimeter, well, we know that we can just add up all of the sides of our rectangle, or we have the formula of 2w plus 2l. So 2 times our width plus 2 times our length. Because if I'm adding these two sides here, they're the same. So instead of adding the same thing twice, we can just multiply it by 2. So I know I can represent it by 2 times 150 plus n plus 2 times 65 plus n. So it does say select all that apply. So here I know there is D. So D does have both of what we just wrote. So now let's see if we start to simplify this, does any of these other ones work out as well? So I'm going to distribute the 2 in. So now I get 300 plus 2n, and now I'm going to distribute this in, so plus 130 plus 2n. Let's just see if that's on there. No, I don't see that there. So now we can combine our like terms even more. 2n plus 2n is 4n. 300 plus 130 is 430. So let's see, does this one appear? So 4n plus 430, yes, it does. So C and D are both part of that. And then let's see, is there any other ones that we can do here as well? We can't do this one because we would only be having 2n, but we know that we're distributing that 2 in, or if we add up all 4 sides, we have 4n's. And here it's really close, but the same thing. If we were to distribute that 2 in, we'd only get 2n and not 4n. So that's why this one doesn't work either. So it's only C or D. They both represent the exact same thing. It's just C is the simplified version of D. All right, so for 7, it says choose the expression as not equivalent to this. So if you want to know which one is not, we're going to have to just go through all of them. Like, once again, on your tests, there's no multiple choice. But if there was one like this, because there could be one like this since it's not necessarily multiple choice, but if there was one like this, you just go through all the answers and just simplify them. So 4 times 6x is 24x. 4 times negative 3 is minus 12. 24x minus 12. So yes, A is an answer. Then we can go ahead and try the next one. 12 times 2x minus 1. Well, we're going to distribute in, so 24x, distribute in, minus 12. We see that that still also is an answer. The next one, we have 1/2 of 48x minus 24. Well, when we distribute this in, this gives me 24x, because half of 48 and half of 24 is 12, so minus 12. That one is also an answer. And then when we do the last one, we have 24 times x minus 2. Well, 24 times x is 24x, but 24 times 2 is minus 48, which is not equivalent to 12. So that one does not work. So what's good about this question is this showing you that we have a bunch of different ways, things that can all be equivalent to each other, meaning they're all equal. And it can just appear in different ways, which is why it's really important that we understand how to simplify all these different expressions. Because as you'll see next year when we start solving, or when you start solving equations that are a little bit more challenging than the ones we did, things may not appear to be equal or the same, but they actually are, because we can represent it in different scenarios. All right, so for number 8, I'm going to explain this one by using a number instead of what they have here. So, like, if you had something that was $100 and was on sale for 27%, the way that we could solve this is we can take 100 and we can do it a few different ways. We learned a few different ways as well, and we can times it by the percent sales. So let's just do the 27%, and we know that that's going to be 27. And then to find out how much that's going to be worth, or how much you're going to pay now, you would subtract it since it's a sale. So that means it's going to be $73. So in this scenario, though, we didn't know what the cost of this video game was. So it could be represented by X. So we know that one way that we can do this is x times the 0.27. And then we can take that 0.27x and we can subtract it from the original amount to get that 0.73x. So we can then go back to here and say, okay, well, 0.73p, that matches it. So I know that one works. Here, p times 1 minus 0.27, well, we know in math we can do our parentheses, and this is then going to be p times 0.73, which is going to give me 0.73p, which is what we ended up with here. So we know this one works as well. This next one, since they're like terms with p, I can subtract them, which is what we did here. So you see it's identical to that one. So I know b works too. The only one it doesn't is c, and that's because this 0.27 doesn't have a variable attached to it. So we're taking the original price and it's minusing 27 cents from it. So that one wouldn't work. So just by solving it like we would have, we would have been able to figure out that a, b, and d are all the same. But once again, on your test, it's going to be about solving it and not just being able to write what that statement looks like. All right, so for this one, if it's a sales tax, we know it's increasing. So we did learn a few different ways that we can do this. One of the ways is if we have, I'm going to use a different number as well besides this 325, just because we're not asked to solve it. We're saying which one of these represent or does not represent our total. So if we have $100 and we're doing a sales tax, we can then times it by that sales tax. And then that will be what, $8, and then we can add it to the original amount. So this gives 108. Well, remember, this original amount, when we're increasing it, we could have also, as we talked about, we are multiplying it by the whole amount plus that original new increase that we have. So we could have just taken our amount and also multiplied it by 1.08, because this is representing our original amount, 100, plus the additional 8% that's being added to it. So we see that this A does work because we're just taking the original or the final amount and multiplying it by 1.0862, which is the increase in the sales tax. What we did here is we took the original amount, we multiplied it by the sales tax, and then added it back to it. And that's what they're doing here. The original amount multiplied just by the sales tax and adding it back to it. So that one works as well. This one doesn't work because it's the exact same thing as B, but they're adding the sales tax to it and not multiplying. So we know C doesn't work. And then this one here, this 28.05 is the number after you multiply the sales tax. So adding it back to it. So that's this step here after the multiplying. So D works as well. Same thing on your test. You wouldn't have to do all of that. You would just actually give me the answer of 108 or what these two numbers are added together. All right, and then the last question for this worksheet is Remy's goat pen is n feet long and n feet wide. Leela is building a goat pen that is 2.5 times as long and 2 times as wide as Remy's goat pen. Sketch and label both Remy's goat pen and Leah's. So let's do Remy's first. So Remy's will be in black. Remember, really doesn't matter how you draw it. Rectangles, we can rotate them. It's just your orientation is the way you're looking at it. But I'm going to keep this as our width because of the way I drew it. So it'll be n plus 3. And that will be our length of n. So if that's Remy's goat pen and Leela is making hers 2.5 times as long, well, now when I draw Leela's, since this is referring to the length of Remy's, I have to make sure I'm doing that as the length of Leela's. So it'll be 2.5 times n. And then since our width is going in the other direction, I'm going to write at the top because they're the same. It's twice the width of Remy's. So it'll be 2 times n plus 3. So that's how we can represent that as a sketch. Now, write two expressions that represent the perimeter of Leela's goat pen. So I'm just going to go through how we can do this. The first thing you can do is you could just add them all up. So if that's 2.5, I know rectangles have opposite sides are equal. So I can just write it out like this. And the first, whoops, not 3. Yeah, it is 3. So I can just literally just add them all around. So I have 2 of the n.5s plus 2 times n plus 3 plus 2 times n plus 3. Like I can just add up all of them. That's one way of doing it. We also know that we have a formula of 2L plus 2W. So this is where I'm just going to start from and then just kind of simplify it down. So we then have 2 times our length. So our length in this case is 2.5n plus 2 times our width, which we know is 2 times n plus 3. All right, so then from here, that's the same thing that we did here, except for now that we have 2 of these, we're just multiplying it by 2 with the repeated addition. And we have 2 of these, we're multiplying it by 2 with the repeated addition. Then I'm going to go ahead and just actually start simplifying. So 2 times 2.5n is 5n. Well, 2 times 2 is 4. So now I have plus 4 times n plus 3. But I can keep going because I can now distribute this 4. So it's 5n plus 4n plus 3. And I can keep going even more because I still have like terms and add them together. So 9n plus 3. So when it says write two expression, I'm sorry. Hopefully you guys were screaming at the computer when I was making this mistake here. But 4 times 3 is not 3. It is 12. And it's 9n plus 12. All right. When it says write two expressions that represent the perimeter, this, 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 or this, if you just had 2 of those, then you're correct. All right. Because they all represent the same thing, just present it in slightly different ways. All right. Now, the next thing says is Remy's goat pen is 12 feet long and wood for a fence costs $3 per foot. What is the total cost for the fence around Leela's goat pen? So Remy here, her length was just represented by n. So now we know that this n is then equal to 12. So then if I want to solve for this next part, I take the expression I made for Leela's goat pen, and now I'm substituting where n is equal to 12. So now it becomes 9 times 12 plus 12, which is then equal to 108 plus 12, which is then 120. So that means that there's a total of 120 feet that we would then have to put around Leela's goat pen. And if each foot costs $3 and we want to know how much it's going to cost, well, we multiply that by 3, which is then going to give us $360. So that means if we want to put a fence around Leela's goat pen, it will cost us $360. All right, that is it for this video.